Wow, what is going on, you guys, and welcome back to VroomVroomDana. It's been a while since there's been a video, since we've been behind a mic, since there's been race footage. I mean, especially race footage. It's been a very, very long time since I've done a race, and not only a race, but a desert race. I used to be a huge fan of desert races, man, back in the day, probably like 5-6 years ago, maybe even longer than that, if I'm being honest with you guys, on when the favorite thing, or my favorite thing to do, was these desert races. I don't know why, but I absolutely love them, so I decided to sign up for a desert race. I was out here, girl on her bike came out here, Brian, my dad, my buddy Josh, we all decided to come out of like retirement. Well, not necessarily retirement. Gina and Brian have never done one before, but my dad, myself, and my buddy Josh haven't done a desert race in absolutely forever, and our weekends were free, which is pretty rare now. I mean, you guys see obviously the lack of uploads lately with HAVOC growing so much now. We were just not able to get out as much content, and I do apologize for that. Hopefully sometime in the future I'll be able to get back on some sort of schedule, but there's just no reason for me, or no point right now for me to guarantee you guys some upload schedule, because I know for a fact that I'll probably break that schedule. So kind of just on my own terms right now when it comes to uploading, and for that I do apologize. But what you're watching right here is a race from about, God, dude, it's might have been like 2 months now, maybe a month and a half since I went out here and recorded this desert race. It was out in Red Mountain, California. I don't remember the club that put it on, but it was a District 37 desert race. I signed up for a 250B because I haven't done this in absolutely forever, and you guys will see throughout the video that I haven't done it in forever, man. I crashed like 3 times, I believe, and one of them I went down pretty hard, dude. I had the biggest bruise on my leg that it was insane, and the course was so chewed up, so whooped out. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I had an awful time. This is my retirement from desert racing. I'll tell you guys right now that this whole entire race was just a struggle. It's not something that I enjoy doing anymore. I mean, you guys see the enduro footage. We go out there and do enduro stuff, tight technical single track, rock gardens. That is what I really like to do now. That's kind of what I evolved into as a rider, because obviously I used to like the desert racing stuff, but this whole desert racing scene has gone from, let's take everything gnarly out of a race. And to begin with, there really wasn't much gnarly stuff, if you like quote unquote gnarly, in a desert race, but there was rock sections, there was rocky like wash sections, some gnarly hill climbs. There used to be fun stuff in a desert race, but it's like they took everything fun out of desert racing and just put in I think this was like a 70-mile race, maybe high 60s. I did do both loops in the desert race, and it's like they took out everything fun in a desert race. I almost died right there, by the way, in that little clip. If you want to rewind it, there was a massive G out that wasn't marked. I almost shit myself with that one. But yeah, it's like they took out everything fun and left in just flat, whooped out, long, hammered, G'd out washes. And that's just not my thing. I just don't enjoy that type of riding, and it's kind of sad to see. I wish they would put more gnarly stuff back in, but they just don't, and it just makes me not want to go out to these races. And I'm not trying to act like I'm a complainer here, because I know there is people who absolutely love this type of riding. I used to be one of those people who love this type of riding, but as I've evolved as a rider and started to enjoy the gnarlier stuff, the satisfaction of getting up a rocky wash or a gnarly hill, to me there's a sense of satisfaction in that, and just going out and doing an endurance desert race, which, don't get me wrong, there is satisfaction in completing a long desert race. It does feel nice, but for me personally, I'm like halfway through the race and I'm just like, is this thing over yet? Like, we've been doing the same thing for the last 3 hours and I just don't want to do this anymore. And that's just kind of what I've evolved to, I guess, into right. That's a personal thing. I'm not saying that's how everybody feels about it, because I did talk to people that, you know, had a good time at the race, had a fun time. But for me, I just think desert racing is slowly weeding out of my system. But that's enough of me babbling on. I got some awesome clips from this race of me dying, and who doesn't like to see somebody else weed themselves a few times? And there's a lot of me complaining in here, which is freaking hilarious. I went back and watched it. I was like, Jesus Christ, why'd you even complete this race when you're just complaining the entire time? So, yeah, I'll let it play on, and I'll talk to you guys after some more footage plays. Oh my God. What is this? Oh my God. Of course, it's not working. What the hell is it? Dude, this course is not marked. What the heck? This is crazy. There it is. We need to be down in that canyon down there. That'd be sick. God, another death drop. Dude, there's so many G-outs of his death out here.
Come on! What are you doing, Joe? Oh shit, man. Thinks I must. Ah, son of a bitch. Ah, thinks I'll mess up my front tire. Out of my chin.
It's funny because I actually did land like right on my chin on that crash. Like I actually had a little, it wasn't enough to make it like gush blood, but it was enough to actually leave a cut on my chin. I got lucky on that one. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I have no idea how the GoPro didn't just disintegrate, move, crack, or anything in that crash, because my GoPro is chin mounted, and what I think happened on that is when I face planted into that rock, it hit just like the bottom lip of my chin piece on my helmet, and I think it just pushed up right there, and a little bit of the rock actually sliced my chin, but I actually got extremely lucky on that, because I feel like if it was a quarter of an inch up, I would have just obliterated the GoPro, and if it was a quarter of an inch down, I would have obliterated my chin and probably just gashed it just completely up. So looking back at it, I mean, it did hurt at the time, but I got lucky. I mean, I got lucky that I just landed literally perfectly on the chin piece of the helmet where it didn't blow apart the GoPro or blow apart my chin. So welcome to crash number 1 of this race. It's just, I don't know, it felt, for some reason, I think it was just the sand mixed with that loose, like, kind of lava rock type loose gravel through there that made my tire feel dead, because you'll hear in the video that I mentioned that my tire felt dead through there, and I was running a softer tire in this race up front, but I had a pretty stiff bib in it, and it wasn't too bad, actually. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was, but when I got into that sandy, loose lava rock type section in there, it made, for some reason, the tire feel really, really dead, and that little short section was kind of a struggle, which was weird, because everything else up into that point, and then right after we got out of that section, it felt great, but for some reason in that little tiny situation where it was really sandy through there, and a lot of little, like, not little, I would say medium-sized little boulders throughout there, for some reason the front tire just felt really, really dead through there, and you would notice from the start, like directly when we got into that section, that I was a little bit squirrely, and yeah, it just, it goes to show you guys that front tires and even rear tires, depending on what riding you're doing, play a pretty major part in what you're doing. So if you feel like you have a dead front tire, or you feel like you can't control the front of the bike, you got to pay attention to maybe the front tire you're using, and that could be a big problem. But I'll go back into the footage right here. You could see for the, I think the second time, maybe possibly the third, we're lost again, because the course was just really, really poorly marked. Like, in all my experience of doing desert races over the years, this was hands down the worst marked course I've ever seen in my life.
That course markings are just everywhere. follows the course, dude. I can't follow this stupid thing. It's a joke. It's gotta be a joke. A little lost for a second.
Right here you can see up ahead that we're heading into pit row. If you're unfamiliar with desert racing, a lot of it's 80 miles. This course was actually a little bit shorter. I think it was like 35 or something like that. It was pretty close to that mileage overall. It might have been like 35, 32. But after the first loop, you go into the pits, you fuel up, you do whatever you need to do real quick before you go out into the second loop. If you need like a snack or granola bar, gas, you need more water, goggle change, whatever it may be, because obviously if it's an 80-mile race or even a 70-mile race, you can't get through it on a tank of gas. So everybody comes here through pit row. Me mainly, I just went and refueled and got a new pair of goggles, and then you head into loop number 2, which is supposed to be more technical than loop number 1. That's kind of how it's laid out. If you're a beginner rider, or I think even a novice rider, you are opted in to do one loop, and then novice riders, I believe you're actually opted in to go for a second loop if you want to. But everybody like B class, pro class, those classes, you are opted in to go both loops. So the second loop is always supposed to be a little bit harder, and yeah, with that being said, we got some gas going in the tank right here, thanks to this random guy. I believe his name was Jeff, for helping me out filling up the tank. And yeah, we'll fast forward right after the fuel stop right here.
Yep. Oh, it's good. The longer, the better. All right, thanks, boss. What was your name? Jeff. Jeff Dana. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Upside down, man.
Oh, yeah. Son of a bitch. God, this course is marked like shit. Ah.
I don't know about you, but I possibly couldn't think of a better way to start off the second loop. Not only was I already over it after the first loop, there's nothing like just completely weeding yourself about a minute into the harder of the two loops. I mean, it was just poorly marked. I mean, obviously I look back on it and I see the people down in that little ditch to the right of me when I was up top, and I saw them once he was down there, so I was looking for an entrance point into that ditch. But you can see right here, even on the left side, there was like a little bit of a cliff going down there, so I was just riding the ridge on it until I was able to merge down into the actual trail. And then of course there's a massive G out literally next to the trail that wasn't marked. I mean, come on, like you gotta be marking stuff that's literally a foot off of the trail. I saw it, I locked up the brakes, there was literally just nothing I could do to slow down, and it was too big of like a G out to just wheelie over or something of that case. So yeah, that one hurt right there, man. That's the one that gave me the massive bruise on my thigh, and that hurt for about the first 10 miles of the second loop. I had pretty much a dead leg starting this entire loop, which was definitely no fun. That one was just, I mean, obviously, if I was down in the ditch, which I just saw the dust streak, and it was such a sharp left to get down in there, I just rode the top of it, and yeah, I weeded myself. That was not a fun crash.
Again, what else is new on this course? What is going on? Oh my god, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Unreal. Just lost like 40 positions because everybody goes the wrong way. Nobody knows where the course goes. Finally, some fun stuff. Yeah, well, that was fast lift. Fun for a second. Ooh, it's hard to stand up. My legs are jello-y. Tired.
Little section right there is probably my favorite part of the entire race. I would consider that probably the most technical little section of the entire race. And that just boils down to the fact when there's a lot of rocks scattered up a hill like that, I feel like a main thing people do is try to pick the lines around the rocks. Like when it's super rocky like that, you look for these lines that are cutting in and out, bobbing in and out through these rocks, and that's not always your best option, especially when it's sandy like that, when it's a sandy uphill with just little boulders everywhere and you're trying to pick your line through the rocks. That's how you get squirrely. I mean, you guys got to remember, rocks have a lot of traction, especially in stuff like that when they're not that big and they're not something like you have to blip over or use some sort of different technique to go up that hill. Sometimes the best option is just to go over all the rocks. I mean, rubber on rocks is going to be a lot more of a traction thing than you trying to bob and weave through the sand with your tires. So just remember that next time you guys come across a gnarly hill, is sometimes the best line up the hill is not the one that looks the easiest. Sometimes the one that maybe looks harder is actually the easier line. I mean, you got to remember that at the end of the day, rocks have traction. The same thing applies to ruts. There's some hills that I'll go up where I'll get into the rut because it's more hard packed inside of a rut than next to the rut that's super sandy. So just something to think about when you guys are scoping out lines going up some hills is just because something looks the easiest down at the bottom, it doesn't mean that that's actually the easiest line. Sometimes you going over the rocks, or sometimes you taking the line that may look harder is actually the easier the line. And that was something I used to struggle with when I was riding. I would always try to avoid the rocks. If there was like a little 1 foot waterfall drop, I would go in between it instead of just going off of it. So there's little things that you could do when you're riding that you don't even know that you're doing it, but you're making the trail harder than it needs to be just because there's an obstacle in that trail that is psyching you out. And that's something I've learned over the years is don't psych yourself out. I mean, a lot of the times, like I said before, these rocks, I mean, they have traction. These other lines that aren't the obvious line are gonna be so much easier for you. So next time you're out riding with your buddies, or you're riding out with a group of friends, or whatever the case may be, even maybe in a race, look for alternate lines. Just because everybody's making it complicated on themselves doesn't mean you have to either.
Oh my God, the silt is deadly. Alright, we get down for a Sunday cruise. We ain't racing no more, we're just cruising. Keep it easy, keep it on 2 wheels. That's all she's about. Back again. Zero energy left, boys. I'm done. Whew. I am fried out.
So you guys can tell that I'm pretty exhausted. You can see my left handguard flew off. I think I just hit a bush. It broke from that one fall that I went into that gully. I just crashed into that and it was hanging on by a thread. Especially out here in Red Mountain, there's a lot of these just thick bushes out here, so just hammering against them the whole time. The handguard was like, you know what, I've had enough of the abuse. Let's get off this bike, which is pretty much how I was feeling at this moment. It's a lot different when you're just, like, all I do now is pretty much play ride. Like, either if you're recording a video, or 90% of the time, I'm not even recording. So I'm out here play riding, you're joking with your buddies, you're taking breaks, you're taking water breaks, you're watching somebody go up something. It's completely different than getting on your bike and riding for 3-4 hours, literally straight, at a pretty decent pace. Like, when you're play riding, usually you're not pushing yourself, you're usually cruising, you're out there having a good time. So when you put yourself in a predicament where you're trying to push yourself, and it's something that you don't have the endurance for anymore because you don't do this anymore, it takes a toll on your body. I'll tell you guys right now that once this race was over, I could barely lift my arms off the bike. Like, I had to have help getting my jersey off because I couldn't lift my arms above my head. My hands were just locked onto the bars for just gripping on for dear life for 4 hours straight, or 3.5 hours, however long the race was. And I'll tell you guys that I haven't been this sore after riding in, I couldn't remember, 10 years maybe 12 years. I was so sore I couldn't even sleep at night. I literally had to lift my legs to roll over on my bed. It was insane. I was just completely drained of just every ounce of energy I had. And you guys could tell right here, I just turned it into a let's finish the race alive moment. I was just tired. I didn't want to push myself anymore. It's not even that I wanted to. I just couldn't push myself anymore. And it was just like, you know what, let's just pretty much sit down, let's get through the rest of the race. and let's retire after this. And that's pretty much what I did. This is probably going to be my last desert race. I was struggling out there. The course markings were terrible. I just didn't have a great time out there. But still, at the end of the day, man, it's good to get time on the bike. It had a couple fun sections in the course. And yeah, I mean, that's all I got to say. The GoPro literally dies here in about a minute. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. I think we ended up in 6th place, and if it wasn't for that section of the course where we got lost for 4 to 5 minutes, I believe we would have placed 3rd. The first 2 guys were really far ahead, but 3rd through like 7th were literally minutes apart. So if it wasn't for the course markings and me going totally off track, I think we would have snagged the 3rd place. But 6th place after not doing it in a while, still a respectable finish. Thank you guys. Drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let me know. Do you guys like desert racing, enduro riding, motocross? What's your thing? Let me know in the comments. Thanks, guys.